Would you trade 15% of your paycheck today to double your career options tomorrow? That's the exact dilemma one of my coaching clients faced. She'd been in her current role for several years, and honestly, she'd gotten pretty good at it. The money was decent, her manager liked her, and she knew exactly what she was gonna do every single day. But here's the thing. Every Monday morning felt like Groundhog's Day. She wakes up, gets her coffee, opens her laptop, and thinks, here we go again. Last week, her company posted an internal opening for a management role. And my client, she looked at that posting and thought something that she hadn't thought in a long time. Actual excitement. She could see herself in that role, leading a team, solving bigger problems, and having an even bigger impact on the business. But then she saw the salary range and her heart sank. It was a 15% pay cut from what she makes now. If you're watching this video, I bet you've been in a similar spot. Maybe you are right now. Maybe not exactly this situation, but something like it. You know that feeling. You're making good money, you're paying the bills, but there's this persistent voice in your head that says you're meant for something different. And then the opportunity shows up at your door, but carrying a smaller paycheck. Today I want to walk you through the same framework that I've used with my clients in the past to go through this exact decision. Not based on fear or wishful thinking, but based in strategy and clarity about what you really want your career to look like. Here's why this decision keeps you up at night. It's not really about the money, even though that's what we tell ourselves. What we're really deciding to do or not to do is to bet on our future selves. We're choosing between the security of the known and the potential of the unknown. And that touches on some pretty fundamental fears. When I work with clients on career decisions like this, I see the same pattern over and over again. They get caught in this loop of second guessing themselves. One day they're convinced they should take the leap. The next day they're calculating how much less they'll have in their retirement account. It's exhausting, and it's exactly why most people in this situation just stay put. Or they make an impulsive decision and just hope for the best. But here's what I've learned coaching many professionals through career transitions. The people who make the successful career moves aren't the ones who ignore the risks or avoid them entirely. They're the ones who have a systemic way of evaluating what they're really trading off. They ask themselves the right questions and they're honest about the answers. What we're really deciding when we consider to take a pay cut for career advancement is this. Are we willing to make a short-term investment in our long-term trajectory? And just like in any investment decision, we need to look at the potential returns, the risk, and whether or not we can afford to make the investment in the first place. I'm gonna give you 4 tests that will help you cut through all the emotional noise around this decision. Think of these as filters. Each one helps you analyze a different aspect of the decision that you're making. And here's the key. You need to pass all 4 tests for this to be the right move. If you fail one of them, that's your answer. The first test is what I call the timeline test. This is about whether or not you can actually afford to make the transition. Not just financially, but practically and emotionally. The second is the trajectory test. We're looking at whether or not this move actually accelerates your career growth in meaningful ways. Third is the alignment test, which is probably the hardest because it requires you to be brutally honest about what you actually want your career to look like. And finally, the trade-off test. This is where we get clear about what you're gaining and what you're trading off. I want you to think of this client as we go through each of these. She was considering a move from her current role into team management, taking a 15% pay cut. But really, I want you to think about your own situation. What opportunity are you considering? What's the pay cut that you'd be taking? Keep that in mind as we work through this framework together. Test 1, the timeline test. The first question we need to answer is very straightforward. Can you actually absorb lower income for 6 to 12 months while you're proving yourself in this new role? Notice I said 6 to 12 months, not indefinitely. Most career pivots are not about permanently earning less money. They're about temporarily accepting lower pay while you demonstrate your value in a new area. When I'm working with a client on this, the first thing that we realistically do is build a budget here. And it's based on that lower salary. And I mean realistic, not what you think you'd spend, but what you actually spend. Pull out all your bank statements, all your card statements for the last 3 months and add them up. Include everything. The coffee runs, the subscription services that you forgot about, the random Amazon purchases. Now, build a monthly budget around that new salary and ask yourself, can I live on this without being stressed about money every single day? Here's why this matters so much. If you're gonna be worried about paying rent or paying car payments, you're not gonna perform well in your new role. Financial anxiety is like the background noise that makes it impossible to focus on learning new skills and proving your value. I've seen too many people take career pivot roles and then sabotage themselves because they're distracted by money stress. This client ran the numbers and she had about 8 months of expenses saved up. And the pay cut would still cover her basic costs. More importantly, she had a partner whose income could help bridge the gap if needed. So that was a pass on the timeline test. But you could see if one of these things changed, if she had been living paycheck to paycheck, this would not have been the right time for the move. The other thing to consider here is what I call the stress costs. Even if you can technically afford the pay cut, how will the financial pressure affect your mental state? And your relationships for that matter. These stresses are real costs that need to be factored into your decision. So be honest with yourself about this test. If you're already stretched thin financially, or if taking a pay cut would create that significant stress, this probably isn't the right opportunity or the right time. There's no shame in waiting until you're in a financially better place. Test 2, the trajectory test. Now let's talk about whether or not this actually accelerates your career growth. This is where we get strategic about your long-term career trajectory. The question is, does this role build skill, visibility, or leadership exposure that your current role just simply cannot? When I'm coaching someone through this analysis, we break it down into 3 areas. First, skill development. What new capabilities will you build in this role? And here's the key. Are these skills that are valuable across other companies or industries, or are they very specific to this particular organization? You want to be building portable skills that increase your market value, not just learning one company's internal processes. Second, we look at the visibility factor. Will you be working directly with senior leadership? Are you going to be contributing to high-stakes projects that get attention from executives? One of your biggest career accelerators is being known by those in leadership roles. If this new role puts you in rooms that you can't access in your current position, that's a significant advantage. Third is leadership exposure. Are you going to be managing people, owning projects, or making decisions that affect business outcomes? Leadership experience is one of those things that is very hard to get without actually doing it. And it's often a requirement for advancing into senior leadership roles. The red flag I watch out for here is when you're basically just doing the same work, but with a different title. If you're not advancing your skill set or your circle of influence, then you're just taking a pay cut with no real trajectory benefits. Be honest about what you'll be doing day to day in this role. Test 3, the alignment test. This is the test that most people want to skip, and it's also the most important one. The question is, does this move bring you closer to what you actually want your career to feel like? Not what you think you should want. Not what looks impressive on LinkedIn, but what actually energizes you and feels meaningful. I have to be honest with you, this one requires significant self-reflection, and most people honestly have not done this work. We get so caught up in climbing the ladder that we rarely even look to see if it's leaning against the right wall. So let's dig into this together. First, I want you to do what I call an energy audit of your current role. Think about a typical week. What parts of your job actually energize you? And when you do find yourself in flow, losing track of time because you're so engaged, what is it that you're doing? And on the flip side, what constantly drains you? What tasks make you want to procrastinate or delegate them to others? The second part of this analysis is about your values and your work style preferences. Do you thrive when you have a lot of autonomy? Or do you actually prefer more structure and clean direction? Are you energized by leading teams and developing people? Or do you prefer being an individual contributor? How important is work-life balance compared to career advancement? This is where people always deceive themselves. They say things like, I should want to be in management, or more money always equals more success. But if you're an introvert who gets energy from deep, focused work, managing a team of people might drain you, regardless of the title or the salary. If you value flexibility and control over your schedule, a role with more meetings and stakeholder management might make you miserable, even if it advances your career. So here's the gut check I give my clients. If money wasn't a factor at all, which role would you choose? Your honest answer to that question tells you how much weight the financial considerations should have in your final decision. If you choose the new role without even considering your career advancement, that's strong alignment. If you'd only choose it for strategic reasons, that's weaker alignment. And you need to be realistic about whether or not you'd be satisfied with that trade-off. So we've covered the first 3 tests in our framework: the timeline test, the trajectory test, and the alignment test. These 3 alone will give you a tremendous amount of clarity about whether or not this career move makes sense for you. Take some time to work through these tests for your specific situation before moving on to part 2. In part 2, we're gonna dive into the final test, the trade-off test, where we get really specific about what you're giving up and what you're gaining. Then I'll show you exactly how to make your final decision by using some examples from my coaching clients. And I'll give you a complete action plan for moving forward. I'll see you there in the second part.